Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm going to be sharing with you guys how you can work any database. So I fell into a trap when I got into the industry, and that was I had sticky notes everywhere, contact information everywhere. I bought a database because I thought it was the thing to do, and then nobody trained me on how to use the thing. So I'm going to show you my simple rules that will apply to any database, and there's a little template that I'm going to give you. There's a handout when you guys got the folder. In your folder is a little piece of paper, and you can tell it's mine because it's got my big head on the bottom of it. And up at the top are some URLs where you can download all the stuff that I'm talking about. So I help real estate agents with their marketing and their technology, and I help broker owners with their agent recruiting and agent growth. Now, my topic today is working a database. So I'm going to share with you the contact capture form, so how I qualify people over the phone. And the thing with databases is when you have a database and you get a phone call, you're not actually in your database. You're in the car, you're driving, you're showing property, so you're not actually logged into the database. So I'm going to show you a call capture system that I use. It's a simple piece of paper that you can then take all that information and then put it into your database. Because you don't have your database logged open, you're not entering the people in while you're on the phone. You have to write it down. So we still use the old school method of pen and paper. Then, after that, I'm going to give you the 3 rules that apply to any database, and I'm going to end off with giving you guys a 90-day game plan that you guys will be able to work into the new year to have an awesome, rocking 2017. So starting off is this contact capture form. Now, I got to caution because this is what I look like, only a little younger when I got into the industry. I literally had notes everywhere. I would have an MLS sheet just floating around the office. Somebody would call me and I would write their information on that piece of paper, but they didn't even relate to that MLS number or that listing. I just was writing it down everywhere. I wasn't this angry. I was actually happy that I had phone calls coming in, but I was pretty stressed out with my lack of follow-up. So this is a piece of paper, and I'll zoom in. Let me zoom in here. Okay, up at the very top right of this piece of paper is a box. It's where you put the person's name, their phone number, their email, their address, the source of where they came from. Was it an open house? Was it a sign call? Was it a referral? The very first piece of paper that I wrote this information down was ID number 1. The next one, ID number 2, ID number 3. So it was page 1, page 2, page 3. So it was an easy way for me to keep track of who's who and when I have to follow up. I'll show you that part of the system, but I put that information there. Underneath is the random notes. So what are they about? These guys are having a baby and they're moving from Toronto to Durham region, which is where I'm from, and these are the MLS numbers that they're looking at. So you have to have a scratch pad area where you can write down the variables. But one thing that's not a variable is everybody's looking at buying a home. And in my area, I would put the words in their mouth. I would say, so if you were to move, where did you want to move to? Oshawa, Whitby, Pickering, Ajax. And I put the words in their mouth, because if I don't, they're just making things up, and they don't know what to say. So I give them the answer and give them a small choice. Because I have it written out, on this example, it says east, west, north, south, all of the city. So I had Oshawa, Whitby, Pickering, Ajax, all of Durham region. And when a person is on the phone, they'll be like, oh, we're looking to Oshawa and Whitby. And I'm just circling Oshawa, Whitby. Like if they had said Bowmanville, that's almost every letter in the alphabet. That would take me 3 or 4 seconds to write that out. And if I'm writing out the word on the piece of paper, I'm not actually engaged in listening to them. So with this, it's just like, oh, you want Oshawa, you want a 2-bedroom, 3-bathroom. And it's like, tick, 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 townhouse, 450. What do you need? They need a garage, finished basement. So I have room for the variables down below, but it's such an easy entry to get all their information. Now, because I just had the conversation, I'm getting all their information. I can easily roll into my qualifying questions. So I want to find out where they want to move to, because this is what they want to talk about. If they're going to even talk to me at all, it's going to be what they want as a home. So as soon as they tell me what they want, I'll reread what I just wrote down and I'll repeat it. I'll be like, oh great, you're looking for all of Durham, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, a townhouse under 450, and you need a garage. Now if you were to move, when did you want to move by? And it instantly goes up to my qualifying questions. So I have all my qualifying questions written up here. So if you were to move, when did you want to move by? They'll tell you something generic. Spring, summer, fall, in the new year, whatever. Then I'll repeat what they say, and I'll say, okay, great. So if you were to move by the spring, when would it make sense for you to get in a car and start looking? I'm just peeling that onion layer back one more layer. This is when you should be following up, when they want to get into a car, not when they want to move. You're too late by that point. So when when do you want to get into a car? And they'll tell me. Then I'll say, when that time comes, do you have a realtor that you're working with? So I'm just peeling it back one more layer because they just told me when they want to get into a car, and it's a logical thing to ask. The next thing is, when that time comes, do you have a realtor you'll be working with? Hopefully they say no. Do you already have a home that you need to sell? If they do or don't, are they renting? When's the lease up? Like, you need all that information to know when to follow up with people. And have you ever talked to a lender about financing? That's the last question I ask because a lot of people really don't want to talk about that part, at least on the first phone call. So I'll leave it last. I'll ask that on the second phone call. Underneath, if they are selling, is my selling box. So if they are selling, the very first question is, was it ever listed on the MLS? Because if they say that it was on the MLS, guess what? You've already got all the information about the property. You know what they purchased it for. You know how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. So all you have to say is, since you guys bought it, did you do anything to increase the value or decrease the value? They don't want to be on the phone. You got to be in and out in like 8 to 12 minutes is a comfortable number for a conversation. If you start getting into all these questions, you just added another 5 minutes of conversation that isn't necessary. So for me, if it was on the MLS, perfect, then I can get those answers later. And then I'll just say, well, what price were you thinking? And so when I give you this template, I should have pre-writ $1 million, because that's what they all think the thing's worth. But you'll write down the variable. It's a detached, it's a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom, 0 garage, unfinished basement. They got a new roof and windows, blah, 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 and this is the address. Down below, at the very bottom of this piece of paper, is my call log. And that's where I write in the information of, do I show an example? No, I don't. So I show an example at the bottom. I'll write in what the next call is about and why. There was only room for like 4 or 5 entries. Guess what happened after the 5th phone call? I would flip that piece of paper over and then use the back of it. I had a whole fresh sheet. I mean, the more crumpled and coffee stained this paper is, the cooler you are, because it means you're actually doing the business and following up with people. So I would take the leads that I like, and I would put them in the binder. I had a binder, page 1, page 2, page 3, and so on. On the left was a year of the calendar, like the calendar year, and I'll zoom in. So you can see I have an example filled in of a piece of paper. Well, this guy I have to call on April 3rd. So on April 3rd, I'll write page 30, because this guy's page 30. But as the months and years are going forward, my calendar is filling up. So come August, I can just pull out page 1, page 34, page 75. I'll reconnect with all those people, and then I'll push their circle forward by the right day and time. It is the easiest way for you guys not to drop somebody in the cracks, because if you put them in a database that's like a lost name and number, and your database is a scary looking thing because you don't even know who half these people are, you're almost better off starting off with a new database. So with this system, we are able to actually follow up with our leads and not drop people in the crack. Now, I am not saying don't use a database. That's the next step. We ended up using a database. So I would still use this piece of paper to script and qualify my people on the phone. But then I would take a picture of that piece of paper and email it to a team member who then would do the CMA, the drip plan, set them up on the buyer alert. They would do whatever had to be done. We got to a point where at the bottom of the piece of paper was all the different checkboxes of the follow-up plans that we have. So I would check off what plans I want these people on, take a picture of that, send it into the team, and then the right people would do the right job. Or even do it to yourself. I mean, you need all that information, right? And you're driving, you're not going to put them into the plan right away. It's just too complicated. So with this, you can have it all and then do it on Monday, or whatever's comfortable for you. Now, I highly suggest that you actually do use a database. And if you do use a database, I don't care which one you're using, I'm going to give you the 3 rules that will apply to all of them. Because this is what most of our databases look like. You don't know who the people are, it's a big dusty cobweb, right? So we're going to reconnect with our people. And we're always going to have these 3 rules. Rule number 1 is to have a next call date. If they're important enough to be in your database, they have to have a next call date. Because if they don't, then guess what? You're not going to call them. 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, 3 years goes by, then what? Delete. You might as well, because they've already moved on. So always have a next call date. You have to have your database broken up into smaller groups. If you just have everybody into one big database, it's too hard for you to effectively market with that. When you have it broken down into these are my buyers, these are my sellers, these are my past clients, it's a lot easier for you to leverage the different pieces of your database at the right time and place. And I'll show you some examples. And simplifying your notes. So that piece of paper, I still use the piece of paper system. I'm taking all my notes, but then I have to put those notes into the database Otherwise, guess what? It's that big file folder system with the dusty cobwebs. You don't know who they are, you don't know where they came from. So we have to simplify our notes. So going deeper, rule number 1, always have a next call date. This is an example of a database. All databases are different, but essentially, whatever database you're using, you can apply a next call date, a task, or a to-do on everybody. So here's, say I get an internet lead today. I'm going to call that internet lead. I'm going to add them to my database, and the title of this is just next call date, because they all have a next call date. So say I get a lead today or whatever, I'm going to follow up with him on Friday. So I'll hit Friday, and I'll hit save. Friday is going to come around. I pick up the phone, I call the guy again, because I got a whole list. It's easy. All I got is 6 people to call today, because my database is telling me the simple formula. So I'm going to call this guy on Friday. He doesn't answer the phone. Now what am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to push this forward. So I'm going to say, okay, it's Friday. I'll try him maybe on the weekend. Or no, maybe not. I don't want you guys working weekends. So I'm going to do Monday. So I'm going to call this guy on Monday. I finally call. The guy answers the phone. He's like, yeah, we're so excited. We want to move in a couple weeks. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to save this. In a couple weeks, I'm going to push it forward and hit save. 2 weeks come around. I call the guy. I'm like, hey, Joey, you want to get in the car? You're really excited. You want to move? He's like, yeah, you know what? I didn't know you can't move when you're bankrupt. Shoot. Okay, so I'm going to open this up, save, jump, January 1st of the next year. Come January 1st of next year, I've got a list of like 200 people that I talked to the year before. It is a really good way to start in the new year. And then I'll just keep pushing it forward. So I'm never deleting that. It is so satisfying for us to check off done, to mark it as a done thing. But if they don't have another next call date, then you're not going to call them again. My rule is if they're in the database, they have to have a next call date, and it can't be longer than a year. 1 year is the maximum range, and then anything between that makes sense for them. That was the other thing with these complicated drip plans, is that it was kind of like a one-size-fits-all. But all your clients aren't the same size. Some of them are investors, some of them are like going through a divorce, some of them are having a baby. Like, there's so many variables, it's hard to have a drip plan that actually works. But with this, it's manual. I'm just constantly pushing it forward 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever makes sense for them personally based on the conversation that we're having. Now, rule number 2 is breaking your database up. These are the only 3 that you need that I suggest is your sphere of influence, which is buyer leads. Your sphere of influence is friends, family, and past clients. And then they're either a buyer lead or a seller lead. Either way, your goal is to get them into becoming your sphere, meaning a past client. There's some databases that will say like hot lead, cold lead. Like, it's so hard for you guys to regulate the temperature of these people. It's always in flux. It's just a nightmare of keeping it clean and simple. And to me, it is simple and clean that they're either a buyer or a seller or my sphere of influence. Now, you can break it down into smaller groups. Like, I had investors, tenants, and agents. You can definitely go deeper, but I don't want to overwhelm you. You only need the 3. Your sphere of influence, they're either a buyer or they're a seller. Now, why do we need to break our database down? Let's say we have a client appreciation event. Well, I'm going to email everybody in my database about that client appreciation event. That's an easy one. But what about direct mail? How could I do direct mail? Well, let's see. If I had all of my seller leads into my database, obviously if they're a seller lead, I have their address because we talked about their property. So I could go into my database, search seller leads. It's going to give me a list of, say I got 300 people in my database. It's going to show me the 60 seller leads or whatever your number is, and I can just print off all the labels. And we can do a postcard campaign in the spring and in the summer and the fall, and just keep updating them about house values in their area. Mass email, obviously, events and seminars. So I learned this rule because I used to do a power of sale tour where we would meet up at a particular property in Oshawa. I would scrub the list of all the listings that I felt were a deal, and we would go around to the different properties. A lot easier back then. But the first time I did an email to my database, my mom replied. She's like, why would I want this? I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Not everybody is the same in my database. So I had to get a new group called investing or investors. So that's why you want your database broken up into smaller chunks. Simplifying your notes, rule number 3. No matter what database you're using, they all have a section for you to add a note about that contact. Like, whatever database, you can add name, phone number, email, address, all that information, right? They all have a note section. The problem with these note sections is when you add a note and hit save, it timestamps it and pushes it down. And then you add another note in like 2 weeks, and it timestamps that one, and now they're stacked on top of each other. If you've been working with this person for like a year, there's like how many timestamps? You got to scroll down, you got to open them all up. It's too hard to manage. So what I started doing was just having one note, and I always edited that one note. So I created a formula, and this is it. I'll email it to you. This is a Word document, and when I added somebody to my database, I would copy and paste this Word document and paste it into the notes section. And then going forward, my role was to fill in these notes, not on one phone call, but over the course of our relationship. So it allowed me to know on the next call, the very first thing up at the top, it says next call. This guy's gone to Cuba, he's back in 2 weeks. Remember I said rule number 1, they have a next call date? Well, if they have a next call date, you know what that number is. What is it? You have to remind yourself, because in 2 weeks or 6 months, you're going to forget. Why do I have to call this guy? So I make a reminder. So in 2 weeks, when I call this guy and he comes back and he's like, yeah, we're not moving till the new year, I'll change that. I'll just hit delete and retype in a new reason of what the next call date is about. That one thing alone is the only thing you really need to explode your business. But I fill in the blanks as I go. So the first contact, where they came from, their criteria when they want to move by. Cell phone request. So cell phone request was, as soon as I had a conversation with a person on the phone in today's day and age, most of the time when I'm calling somebody, it's on their direct line. It's on their cell phone. So if I called Joey and I'm like, hey, that was a great conversation, Joey. I want to email you all the homes that fit your criteria. By any chance, was this number your cell phone that you called from? And he usually would say yeah. And I'd be like, okay, great. When we hang up the phone, I'm going to text you my contact information so that you can save it. End of the conversation, done. I hang up the phone. In your own phone, in my phone, I added me as a contact. I go to contacts and I added Dan Wood, name, phone number, email, office address, my fax number, my social media, my website, all that information. When you have a contact in your phone, there's a little share button. So I would hit that share button and then text it to him. Because if I say save my name and number, he's going to say, yeah, is he going to do it? No. My email's .ca, not .com, so he's probably going to type it in wrong anyways. So because I pre-type it for him and it's one button, that's his database. They don't have a database. The consumers don't have one. Their phone is. So my goal is to get into their database. And you'll see how all these lines are jetted over. I'll point it out on both sides. See how these lines are jetted over? It's because while the phone is ringing, my eyes can scan down and they're just reading the answers. I don't have to read the questions. I just have to read the answers. So I know this guy's looking for, he has a $500,000 condo. We sold him 123 Street for $300,000. He likes running, the name of his kids, his spouse, all that information. It's really valuable for you to have that. And I say we sold this guy a house. So past transactions, sold 123 Street for $300,000. If they did a purchase, I would just hit enter, purchase 1234 Street, $400,000. And in brackets, I would put memorable moments, like the home inspector fell through the deck, or the other agent wasn't really nice, or whatever, because they are going to remember those things, right? And you may not. So I have one simple note, but all these are the important questions for me with a client and an ongoing relationship. And you'll see any glaring holes. So for me, I know I haven't asked this guy when he needs to sell, if he's financed, or if he's working with an agent. Those are qualifying questions that I have yet to ask this person. But because of this sheet, when my eyes are scrolling down, I can see the openings, and that's another reason for my phone call. In addition to him going to Cuba and back in 2 weeks, I know, I have to find out if he needs to sell, if he's financed, or if he's working with a realtor. So it keeps you on track. It's a lot easier for you guys to actually work a database when you do this. Now, I am going to give you guys a 90-day game plan. So when I finish here, I'm going to go stand at the back of the room so you can give me your card so I can email it to you. It's a 90-day game plan that is going to take you through how to work any database over the next 90 days. And it's going to give you the scripts. It's going to show you that your number, we're each going to have a different number. You might be 25 people a week. You might be 10 people a week. It's going to figure out what your number is and give you that game plan. So we have, to wrap up, when I do my breakout session, you can come and you can talk to me, obviously, about working a database, or if you want to talk about lead generation. So I'm going to be here to answer your questions on marketing and technology during the breakout session. And we have lunch. What time do people have to be? Oh, I don't have to do it this time? Very good. Okay, good. So then I'm done with that. So I'll be at the back when we go for break and just hand in your business card, and then I'll email you that as a template so you can work your database going forward. So thank you, guys.